Greetings, friends and family. This is Brother Carl Larley here. I'm fixing to restart the teachings that I had been doing for quite a while, that I stopped doing. I was doing a lot of Facebook Live Bible study teaching videos. I did about a little bit over 3 years worth of, a video almost every single day. I had over 1,000 of them recorded. I did them all Facebook Live, and then Facebook decided they were going to change their storage policies and, told me that they were going to delete all my videos. So I ended up downloading like 700 of them, from Facebook onto my phone through an app and then uploading them to my YouTube channel. Well, unfortunately, after they had all been deleted from Facebook, the ones that I managed to get to my YouTube channel, like 700 plus, they all got wiped out. My YouTube channel got like deleted or wiped out, or something happened to it. And so I lost all of that content. But, and it was kind of discouraging, to be honest with you. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to start all over, but I'm not going to do Facebook Live. I'm going to record them onto my phone, upload them to YouTube, and then post them onto my Facebook page. That way they won't be deleted and they'll stay there. That's my hope anyway. There's some other things I could do, that I'm really not, technologically savvy in terms of having my own website or my own place to store stuff. I don't know. I might figure that out later on down the road. But at any rate, my plan is to be back and to basically start doing little devotional / Bible studies videos like I had been doing before, but they just won't be live. I was coming at 4:30 in the morning, just about every morning, between 4 and 4:30. Especially on days where I had to work, because I'd get up early, a little bit extra early to do my video and then go to work. Every now and then I would have to miss, like if I was offshore and didn't have internet good, solid internet, I wouldn't go live on Facebook, stuff like that. But for the most part, we did these studies almost every day for over 3 years and, covered quite a few books of the Bible, mostly New Testament epistles, and we did do the book of Proverbs, which took about 6 months to go verse by verse, line by line, precept upon precept through that book as well. And that's basically my, as a Bible teacher, my approach, and my focus isn't necessarily, like seminary level, PhD, doctorate level type of Bible teaching where we break down sentence structure in the original languages and, verb tenses and, all of that stuff. My desire is to basically teach the scriptures from a practical application standpoint. How is this word going to affect me in my life personally? How is it going to help me draw closer to Jesus, to walk in the righteousness, to know and understand what God expects from me as a believer? And so it's not so much going to be a bunch of theological head knowledge type of stuff, but rather my focus, my goal, my aim is to try to give you practical application, things that I've learned over my years of studying the Word. So, this is kind of a long introduction, but we're going to get into the book of Romans. And like before I was doing, 15, 20-minute, sections. I tried to keep my videos, 15 to 20 minutes, and some of them were still too long. I'm going to try to shorten it up. I'm going to try to keep them short and sweet, and we may only cover, 1 or 2 as opposed to 3 or 4 verses in a setting, but that's okay. and so I'm gonna just try to do what I was doing before, and hopefully, that the Lord blesses it like He did, when I was doing it before. I got a lot of good feedback from, people that were like, man, these are really good, these are encouraging, and that's, helped me to keep going on when my flesh and I just, sometimes I'd wake up and I'm like, man, I don't feel like doing this, but you know what? I need to, because there are people, my family and other people that depended, they were watching on a regular basis. They, and they depended on the teaching. And so I don't want to let people down, you know what I mean? But at any rate, yeah, so we're going to start in the book of Romans. And, the book of Romans, written by Paul the Apostle, is probably one of the more important books of the New Testament in terms of just basic, practical, sound theological teaching. And, it gives a real good explanation in terms of, what the new covenant is, salvation through faith in Jesus Christ, different theological topics, justification by faith, sanctification, how to live for God, just things of that nature. And so, you could look at the book of Romans and break it up into different sections. A lot of Bible scholars, kind of just go by, break it up into the different topics or themes that Paul writes about. Chapters 1, 2, and 3, the overall theme is all men are guilty before God. That everybody has sinned, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, Romans 3 and 23. And, that everybody needs salvation. Everybody needs a Savior because we've all sinned. And then, chapters 4 and 5, Paul talks about the doctrine of justification by faith. That being justified, being made righteous in the sight of God as a result of faith in Jesus Christ and His finished work at the cross of Calvary, the doctrine of the atonement, if you will, and how Jesus Christ shed His blood so that we could receive cleansing of sin, forgiveness, restoration, and that God could restore to man what was lost in the fall when man sinned. And then chapters 6, 7, and 8 discuss the topic of sanctification by faith, being sanctified, being set apart for God, and being made more and more like Christ as we grow in grace and knowledge. And then, chapters 9 through 11-ish talk about, God's plan for Israel and how that the church and Israel are part of God's plan of redemption, and that how Israel is to become, part of the church by faith in Jesus Christ, and the church is part of Israel of, the Israel of old, the God, God's covenant people, and how we are grafted into God's original plan for them. And even though they didn't, because they rejected Christ, they rejected their part in the covenant. One day, ultimately, Israel will be saved. But at any rate, chapters 9 through 11 discuss that. And then the remaining chapters 12 through 16 talk about practical Christian living. Seeing that these things be so, how then ought we to live is the overarching question behind the topics and the subjects and the things that Paul the Apostle talks about. So that's basically an introduction to Romans. My next video, I'll come back and we will get into verse 1 of chapter 1 and go from there. So at any rate, thank you all for watching. I love you all. I pray y'all have a blessed day, and I will see you the next time I post. Love y'all. See you later. Bye.